That's Nick.
And that's Joseph, and today we're here to talk about Becky, which will be available on digital and demand June 5th, 2020, courtesy of Quiver Distribution and Redbox Entertainment, I believe. It is the third feature directed by co-directors Jonathan Milott and Cary Murnion, and would have premiered at the 2020 Tribeca Film Festival, which was, of course, canceled due to COVID-19.
Becky is about a teenage girl who goes on like a weekend trip with her dad to their family's cabin out in wherever, the woods. And while they're there, they're accosted by 4 men who have recently escaped prison. And these men are holding them hostage until they find a very special key.
Yeah, basically that's the long and short of it. It's a framed narrative. It starts out with Becky, played by Lulu Wilson, who you might recognize from Annabelle creation. She also had a supporting role as Sharp Objects. As the titular Becky, who is being questioned by a law enforcement official and who's either a social worker or a psychologist or therapist of some kind, about what happened 2 weeks before with the men in the orange suits by her cabin. And we back up 2 weeks to what happened at the cabin, and then we get a lot of flashbacks about Becky's personal baggage because her mother died of cancer recently.
Right.
So her father, Joel McHale, is going to be remarried to Kayla, played by Amanda Brugel, who happens to be a woman of color, and Becky is not too happy about that. And when it's announced that their impending marriage, and Kayla also has a young son named Ty, she runs off into the woods to her old fort, and that is when the men accost them, and they're led by Kevin James in a very interesting casting choice as a skinhead neo-Nazi white supremacist, and he has a tattoo on his arm that is in the same shape of the key that Becky just so happens to have. So while they're all holed up their hostage, she's playing Rambo in the woods, talking to them on walkie-talkie, playing games. And then things get violent.
Yeah. Okay. What did you think about it?
I was pleasantly surprised because, as I'm sure you will contest, it starts off kind of rocky. You also think I like that it plays with your expectations because you're expecting one thing based on the casting and another based on our familiarity with these kind of narratives, and there are surprises on both ends. I would describe this as a film that's like a cross between Home Alone and Haneke's Funny Games. So if you like either of those films, maybe somewhere in between.
What didn't work for you?
It's not that anything didn't work, it's just that once the catalyst of the narrative starts rolling, it's really just a game of cat and mouse. And then because it's a framed narrative, which I don't know that we absolutely need, we know Becky's gonna live, so the surprises may be limited. I will say that I was left with some significant moments of dread as it's not really explained what happens to the Kayla and Ty character, right, which has suggestions about Becky's kind of white supremacist leanings herself, as kind of a psychopath, sadist character, which is also part of playing with the film, playing with our expectations.
I agree.
So what did you like or not like?
I agree. The film starts with, her being asked what happened to these people. So like you said, we already know she's going to make it. So I just think there were, I have a lot of questions. The main one is, what the fuck is this key for? So Kevin James' character had hid a key in a box in this family's home. And it sounds like they've owned this home for many years, as in more than 10 years. And Kevin James' character had only been in prison for 9 years. So presumably he could have placed the key there himself. I get the feeling that Kevin James and his white supremacist self is associated with Joel McHale's character or the dead mom. That's kind of the feeling I got. Because there's a scene right before. So in the beginning, when Joel McHale is taking Becky to the cabin, she doesn't know where she's going. She's been pulled out of school. She has an attitude. She's like angsty and miserable. But when she sees like a particular street sign and knows where she's going, she erupts. And they stop at a gas station to get, I don't know, treats, bathroom. And the TV news is saying that 4 men have broken out of prison. And Joel McHale's character, he does this subtle thing where it made me think immediately like he knows something about that. And when Kevin James arrives at the house, he pretends to be a man looking for his lost dog. And Joel McHale's reaction to him is kind of weird too.
Yeah.
Like it's a little cold. And then Kevin James' character, when he sees the black fiance and her black kid, he starts talking about the dog in the house and how that dog is like a mutt, but his dog's a pure breed and pure breeds are better. And that's when the woman says like, okay, well, you need to go. Joel McHale's character seems a little like stunned. So it makes me think like when you put it all together, somehow they're related. So I think when so there are like 3 main questions that we don't get answers to. How this key ended up in the house, like whether or not Kevin James' character is affiliated with this family. What is the key for? And the final scene of the film, because Becky expresses her dislike for her dad's fiance and the son. So it makes me think she kills them at the end.
Right.
But we don't see it.
But we don't think that until the end, because at first we just assume she's somewhat just any other angsty teen who has baggage about her mother dying. But
Becky seems like a sociopath and a psychopath in the making.
That's what it reminded me of that movie Nasty Baby that Sebastian Sola directed with Kristen Wiig and Tunde Adebompe, where about that gay couple, that interracial gay couple that are trying to
right.
And then they end up killing that bum. It's like you spend half the movie thinking one way about our protagonist, and then you realize like, oh, this is an icky person.
I was very satisfied with this film because the first like 20 minutes are rocky, because after the opening scene, when we flash back 2 weeks, we see like a jailhouse fight, and Kevin James is responsible for passing a shank to someone who like stabs a black man. And seeing him like with the reveal of Kevin James and his like Nazi skinhead looking character is pretty shocking. And then Joel McHale's acting in the beginning, because he gets taken out pretty quickly, so we don't get to deal with his acting for very long. But it's a little rough, a little stiff. So I thought, oh, this is going to be some bullshit. But then it escalates very quickly. It's very violent. There are some pretty gruesome scenes, including like Kevin James. He gets poked in the eye, and then he decides that he needs to rip his eye out for some reason. So he literally like, because he can't find scissors that will cut his like optic nerve, so he sits on like the kitchen counter and like pulls his eye out and takes a knife and chops it.
Yeah, there's some very
Becky
that will make you cringe. Yeah,
the Home Alone reference is Becky sets traps for the 3. There are 4 escapees, but Kevin James is kind of like at the house, kind of like holding down the fort. So she kind of sets up a trap for the other 3, and I thought they were pretty fun, pretty gruesome. She, I mean, this little girl is bad as hell. She clearly has a lot of anger in her. I was very satisfied with those 3.
She's very adept at killing, which makes it like that movie Hanna with Saoirse Ronan as the child assassin. I thought of a couple times.
My main note when I finished the film was there better be a sequel. Because I could totally see Becky like 10 years later.
Well, it ends with her chewing on these gummy worms that were actually referenced earlier in the film by Joel McHale at the gas station, which I guess is a clue to indicate maybe he doesn't know his daughter very well.
That's what I understood. Because he, in the beginning when they go to the convenience store, she says like gummies, like she just yells it out like she wants some, and he's like, you don't even like gummies. And then she's eating them. So I thought it was very interesting. I was very satisfied. I think had I paid full price to see this at a midnight screening, I would have been satisfied.
It's kind of these days a rare new film that it does leave you talking about it, because it has a lot of unanswered questions, which is kind of brave.
Yes, it is. I think that there are 3 to 4 unanswered questions that left me. So what didn't work for me is I think there's a little too much left to the imagination. I would have liked one of those questions being answered so I could have extrapolated more confidently but then maybe the filmmaker intended that, because we did, after we watched it, talk for quite a while about all the possibilities, and that was fun.
We did. I just think that in this day and age, especially with what's going on in the country right now, dealing with race issues, like, I wanted to know for sure, like, what happened to this woman. I was so bothered that we don't know what happens to this brown woman.
Like, yeah, but I also thought it was interesting that, like, this girl's, like, violence and hatred is, like, I thought it was actually very clever that it's not exactly clear what her motivation is. Mm-hmm. Like, is it just, like, she's demented and angry, or was it race-based? But either way, I think it's well done. What would you give the film? I would give it... Well, first I've seen their other two films, these directors. Cooties with Elijah Wood, which is kind of a comedy genre film, and Bushwick with Dave Bautista, that's set in that titular New York neighborhood where he plays a mercenary that's killing these men, military men that have staged an invasion. I see this as them kind of graduating to a whole new level in their style, but I would give it 3 out of 5 stars. I would give it 3.5 out of 5. All right, bye. Bye.